This is the flag of Georgia. No, not the US state one, the one with wine, mountains, and a flag that looks suspiciously like England on speed. Today I'm setting the record straight. This isn't a case of a flag borrowing a design from someone else. Georgia's flag has its own story: medieval, revolutionary, Soviet and spiritual. And by the end of this video, you'll never mistake it for England again. And to find out what truly makes this flag stand out, I've travelled to the capital city Tbilisi for this Georgian flags in 50 places. Our story starts deep in the Caucasus Mountains. No, not where Bigfoot lives, the other Caucasus. Right between Europe and Asia. I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia's capital, a city where cable cars glide over sulphur baths, balconies lean like they've had too many, and centuries of history are crammed between coffee shops and ancient fortresses. It's chaotic, charming, and totally alive. And for some reason, President Reagan happens to be here as well. Excuse me. And I'm here on the ground to unravel one of its most misunderstood symbols, the Georgian flag. But before we get there, let's take a look at the local colours. Tbilisi, being a lively capital it is, also has its own flag, adopted in 2005. It features a Nordic-style cross, which, despite being Scandinavian favourite, is used here perhaps more aesthetically symmetry than Viking homage. The gold fimbriated blue cross on a white field is symbolic of Tbilisi's unity and openness, while the central emblem is a Georgian shield with a golden graphical representation of the capital letter T, made from a stylised design of a sparrowhawk and pheasant. It's said to illustrate the legend of Tbilisi's origin, which dates back to and documented as early as the 4th century AD. But busy archaeologists state that there were human settlers in the area as early as the 4th millennium BC. So just a few years difference between those two then. And you'll find this symbol subtly all over the city on drain covers and local government logos. But the capital city, like Georgia as a whole, is a land with history as complicated as my past relationships. Yeah, not sure where that came from. Georgia, or Sakartvelo to the locals, has been a battleground of empires and cultures for centuries. And with each conqueror, a new flag is waved. From Romans to Byzantines, from Arabs to Mongols, everyone wanted a piece. But what about Georgia itself? To fully understand Georgia's current flag, we need a quick rewind, so buckle up for a quick crash course. Originally, Georgia flew a simple wine-coloured banner representing St. George. But by the 14th century, they introduced what's called the Five Crosses flag. Imagine a big red St. George's cross with 4 smaller crosses, essentially medieval branding. This was their symbol of unity and Christianity, powerful enough to scare away invading armies, or so they thought. But where did this curious design come from? That's where things get speculative. In the best possible way, of course. One of the earliest recorded versions of the 5-cross flag appears in the Book of Kingdoms, a 14th century travelogue written by a wandering Castilian friar. He described a white banner with 1 big red cross and 4 smaller ones, attributed to a place called Savasto, or Savies, in modern-day Turkey. Whether that was Georgian territory or just a medieval mapmaker simply trying to cause trouble is up for debate. Some scholars, like Georgian vexillologist Georgi suggested the design was inspired by the Jerusalem cross, introduced during the reign of Georgi V the Brilliant. Yes, that's what he was known as. I guess because he drove the Mongolia Dominion out after a century-long rule in the early part of the 1300s. Around that time, Georgians were founding monasteries in the Holy Land and gaining prestige as guardians of Christian sites. The 4 smaller crosses may have been added to the traditional St. George's cross to reflect this legacy. Is it gospel truth? Not quite, but it's a story that blends history, faith, and a little bit of flag-based flair. Fast forward through the Ottoman invasions, Persian rule and Russian dominance, the flag vanished into obscurity, replaced by the imperial banners. Georgian identity was buried beneath the foreign fabric. Harsh? Maybe. True? Absolutely. Then came the Soviets. Red flags replaced crosses, Lenin replaced saints, identity crisis intensified. But let's dive deeper into Georgia's last Soviet-era flag, because it truly was unique. Unlike other Soviet republics, which stuck largely to the standard yellow hammer and sickle on red routine, Georgia's final Soviet flag dared to stand out. Introduced in 1951, it featured a distinct blue horizontal stripe cutting across the classic Soviet red. But that's not all. It prominently displayed a red hammer, sickle and star within this strange blue sunshine-esque blue canton. If you note other Soviet flags of the time, they all had yellow hammers and sickles, and much larger. It's like someone forgot to give Georgia the full spec on how to redesign their SSR motif. That, or they had completely rebellious flag designer at the time who ignored the rules. I think we should go with the latter. Whatever the reason, this unusual design was Georgia's subtle way of hinting at its own identity amidst a vast uniform Soviet sea. Even within the SSR, Georgia insisted on a splash of individuality. Following the Soviet collapse, Georgia reintroduced its flag from the brief Democratic Republic period between 1918 and 21. Reinstated on the 8th of December 1991, this flag, wine red, black and white, represented good times of the past and future, oppressive Russian rule and the hope of peace, respectively. However, its popularity waned quickly as it became symbolic of the turbulent and chaotic post-Soviet years. Supporters of former presidents still proudly fly this flag as a nod to their political ideals and nostalgia for a turbulent yet pivotal era. The Rose Revolution of 2003, a peaceful, bloodless protest movement led by the people against electoral fraud and political stagnation. Imagine it, thousands of Georgians in the streets, armed not with violence, but with flowers, and incredibly, it worked. The revolution led to a resignation of the then president and ushered in a new government. In a region so often marred by violent conflict, this bloodless shift was nothing short of extraordinary. It was in this spirit of renewal that the ancient five-cross flag was reintroduced in 2004. More than just a throwback, it symbolised resurgence. Imagine the emotional weight when, after centuries, Georgia finally saw their historical banner wave once again. Red crosses proudly on white. No, they're not sponsored by England. And here's the consequence. Distinct yet often confused internationally, Georgia reclaimed its past, yet daily faces the "hey, isn't that England?" confusion. But perhaps that's part of the charm, a conversation starter, much like the obscure band shirt you wear to seem intriguing. And that's Georgia's flag, distinctive, historical, confusingly charming. Thanks for joining me on this vexillological voyage. Got another flag you'd like to see me decode? Well, comment below. And remember, keep your flags in focus. Bon voyage.